This is for all shows on the Surf Splendor Network. This is Chris from Florida. I just watched Felipe Toledo beat Yago Dora at Baby Pipe. I guess it's Pipeline. If Pip wins Pipeline, I'm done. Check please. I am cashing out on the WSL. I'd rather do anything else. This is just a Travis sham mockery, as Scott Bass would say. And Kelly Slater owes me $20 for my Surflival pick. Cheers, boys. Keep up the work.
Well, he's still in because Felipe didn't win.
Felipe didn't win. Congratulations. You got sunset coming up, and you can enjoy another 5-ish days of professional surfing at the very top level.
Why? You don't think sunset's going to be good?
What's the forecast?
I have no idea. I
haven't
no looked yet.
I mean, no, here's the funny thing. You want to know the funny thing, David Lee Scales?
Always. I love fun.
I found my rhythm in watching Pipeline yesterday. So I watched more of, I really eased into it, but pretty much watched Bell to Bell on the good day, which was the start of the round of the 32, right?
32 and 16, I think.
Yeah, was like good surf. I mean, it wasn't like best Pipeline ever, but it was, or not even close, but it was enjoyable to watch. Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, it was totally, again, not stellar pipe, but contestable, and the shiftiness of the swell made it actually really interesting.
And then yesterday, when it was objectively terrible surf, like absolutely rotten to the core, I still found myself enjoying it. I found myself enjoying sort of how Jack Robinson, how John, how these guys surf really lousy stuff. And I typically wouldn't want that. And I typically would blame the WSL. But in this case, you really can't blame the WSL. They really did have kind of a bum forecast the whole time.
Yeah.
They didn't really, you could argue. I know people were saying or DMing or messaging that there was still a couple hours of daylight on the good day when they stopped running. If I recall, the permits, you have to stop at a certain time. Like, you got to give the locals their shot at it. So they couldn't have done that. You know what? You could, in hindsight, you could maybe argue that there's nothing to really argue. They had a bad window. The only thing that I think you could really criticize them for is putting the women out in absolute slop.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Let's start with the first, though. Is this positivity a reflection of last episode being too negative?
Yes, we're coming in hot. I mean, I really want to speak the truth, right? The truth as best as we can. And so when I really sit down and think, I enjoyed yesterday's day of surfing. It wasn't great by any means, but there was enough nuance to it. There was enough texture that there was something to get out of it.
I need to adjust to this new Chaz. I don't know if this is the AG1 talking, because I was ready to go hard in the paint, and now I need to
come hard at me.
Okay. Well, no, I agree with everything you're saying. In that it was contestable. Like, if there are, let's say, 10 waves in a heat, and each surfer gets 5, that's enough to kind of figure out what's what and figure out who the better surfer is. Whereas with the women's day, there was 10 waves throughout the entire day. And there wasn't enough for them to even compete on. So yes, you're right. The playing field had enough waves for them they weren't great waves. And yeah, there is some level of interest in trying to figure out how they find their way through a chandelier section or something like that. And it's relatable because those are waves that you and I would surf. So yes, to all of that. And it's nice of you to make the accommodation of the tour is bloated. The WSL is designed a tour that is bloated.
It's bloated.
And given the structure, they have all these limitations, and within the limitations, they were given this crappy window. And so within this crappy window, they made the most out of it. And my goodness, those couple of people surfed incredibly in those conditions. But we can't overlook the fact that the original goal is to put the best surfers in the world in the best waves and to progress the sport of surfing. That should be the initial goal. So it is nice of you to, for this episode, ignore the fact that they're missing the entire goal, but
Look, I mean, let's be honest. How many years have we told them exactly what they need to do? I think we have honed it so
Yes.
perfectly. Like, we've talked about it. We've talked about it again. We've discussed it in our various discussions going back and forth with people calling in and offering suggestions that, like, we now have, I think, on paper, the perfect tour. We have designed it for them perfectly. There is not one thing out of place in that tour. They're never going to do it, right? They're clearly hell bent on this version of surfing. I mean, remarkably, I paused the other day. I think I even mentioned out loud to the wife. I was like saying something about how bad the forecast was, and mentioned, we've gone through, or I think she asked, how long has Pipe been running or something? And I think I said, we've been running 3 days and we've lost 4 surfers. That was after the elimination round, where treating, I mean, it's ludicrous. Treating swell like it's this bounty that never ends, and designing a tour around, where there's going to be 10 days, there's going to be 10 straight days of pumping surf, because that happens all the time, everywhere. Every break, pretty much, you can show up and you're going to get 10 days of pumping surf in a row. No, we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? You get a one swell window and you better take advantage. And if you're going to have these 2 days, it's just, we've said it, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous to run 3 days of surfing and lose 4 people out of a draw. But what is good is, they could have started and finished. How many heats did they run in that goodish day? It was
all of the round of 32 and
all of the round of 16. So however many heats that is, where if you cut the draw down, right, you could have finished an entire day of surfing in that. Which is, but they're not going to do that. They're never going to do that. For some reason, they love bloat, and I don't know why they love it, but that's what we're left with. And so I'm going to say, it felt good to have pro surfing back.
Well, again, that's nice of you. I agree. We don't need to kind of continually beat the dead horse, because they aren't going to do anything about it. So let's talk about the actual surfing itself, I suppose.
Let's go.
Jack Robinson. This can only be fuel. We can only attribute this success to AG1, clearly.
Obviously. And, talking about survival at the start, I survived because I went with AG1.
I cannot believe you, dude.
AG1 will never steer you wrong.
I cannot believe you.
I start my day with AG1. I'm starting my season with the person who has AG1 in them, one Jack Robinson, and he looked phenomenal. He looked phenomenal on the good days. He looked great on the bad days.
Well, so my, again, criticism of the WSL over the years was, you can't put, F1 drivers in go-karts, essentially. And Jack Robinson is an example who I pointed to over the years, which was, this kid has fine-tuned his surfing in West Oz and big swells in Hawaii to be one of 5 people on the planet who can do what he does. And yet, when he was on tour, I think his rookie year, he almost fell off tour. He finally won the Mexico event at the end of the year and thankfully shored up his position. But that was the example at the time where I was like, they're putting him in Newcastle and all these spots that aren't where, 2,000 people can surf well in those waves. He's one of 5 who could surf well in great waves. Well, what I need to pat Jack Robinson on the back for here is that he's also figured out how to drive the go-kart at the highest level. The waves, certainly he could win pipe when it's pumping, and you might actually bet on him to do that, but I would never expect him to win when it's 3 feet and crappy. And he figured out how to do it, not only against John, but against like high flying Brazilians who are specialized. He beat Gabriel Medina in those conditions, you know? So huge kudos. Again, I'll pat Jack on the back a little bit, but I'm going to pat AG1, athleticgreens.com/surf on the back, because he is the first surfer on tour who I have seen endorse the product. He just endorsed it a month ago. So within 1 month's time, that's the magic that athleticgreens.com/surf is working. And also Leandro Dora, the coach, I could pat him on the back as well, because they've only been working together recently.
Totally. And
Sharp Eye surfboards too.
yep, Sharp Eye. I mean, there's a lot of backpats going around. The funny thing is, and on the women's side, of course, Carissa took out Tyler Wright to win, and I've been waiting for this kind of, and I have a strong feeling that this is the year it happens, where Jack's looking real good, right? John was looking real good. Gabriel Medina, we didn't have a really enough sample size, but
I thought he looked good.
Yeah, I thought he looked good too. Like anyway, we have these three epic surfers, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be battling it out, I would imagine, at the top with Filipe Toledo underneath. It's fully one of them I would love, and I have a feeling that it's going to happen. There's three of them, so they might not have a dominant lead, but those three are going to dominate the year, and Filipe is going to take it out. And it's stinking. John's going to win Chopu. Jack's going to win J-Bay. They're going to win the important ones, and Filipe Toledo is going to host his second trophy at the end at
the final state, the failure of the final state format.
And Carissa was looking so good that I could very well see a scenario in which she honestly runs the table, basically, has such a dominant point lead by the end that she'll have like everybody comboed by threefold, right? And that she could lose again to a Brisa Hennessy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I did see the article or the headline that you guys published about Carissa crying for a month after the loss.
Yeah.
What was the story behind that?
I mean, I think it was an interview where she just opened up about how much it hurt, right? It was gutting, I think. Like for us, it's fodder to talk about. This is her life, right? And the World Surf League threw a wrench into the whole works that they've been doing it this way forever. They thought, oh, we need to get excitement. We need to somehow, everybody knows the story, we need to somehow recreate the excitement that we had when it was, who was it, Gabriel versus John or
Gabriel Italo at Pipe?
Yeah, at Pipe, where the final was decided in the final, right? At the final heat of the final event was actually deciding the winner of the year. I don't know who in their right mind at the World Surf League, which I don't think there's very many right minds there, how you thought you could recreate that, right? You caught a lightning in a bottle there. The reason there was so much weight there is because you had an entire tour behind it. It wasn't that they were competing to see who won Pipe. It was all of this year building up to it. Well, Trestles doesn't build up, that stupid Trestles Day doesn't have that. But anyway, so they wreck the whole thing, like kick Carissa in the teeth while they're doing it. And she's supposed to just be a good sport about it. Say, well, these are the rules now.
Well, Luke Cederman said something pretty profound to me. He said that was the worst thing to ever happen to professional surfing, was Italo and Gabe meeting in the final at Pipe in in 2019 in Pumping Surf, because Eric Logan read it entirely wrong.
Yeah.
He did not recognize that the waves are the stars. And yeah, it's nice to have number one and number two end up in the final together, but the waves are the stars. That's what Eric didn't recognize. He just thought, oh, the drama of 1 and 2, let's manufacture that. Well, once it's synthesized, it's no longer the same thing at all.
No, because watching Steph beat Carissa, watching number 5 beat 1, there was no any kind of feeling of like, wow, look at that. I mean, Steph's run from 5 to 1, was cool in and of itself, I suppose, but not at the expense of like both the. I mean, they really gutted any kind of meaning in pro surfing at that point.
Well, it undermines the integrity of their entire tour.
Yeah. Why tour?
Like why even do it at that point?
Get 5th.
So I wonder, I don't think Carissa has enough narcissism to be the spokesperson for women's surfing.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, she kind of is. Her position, she's an Olympian, gold medal Olympian. She's obviously won 5 world titles, all this sort of stuff. So I don't know how she doesn't feel like this is an assault on women's surfing, the way that the WSL is treating the women's league. And of course, she's been a beneficiary of the WSL because she's won these titles. But they didn't give that to her. She earned that on her own.
Sure.
Everything that the WSL does actually kneecaps her. Like them running her in those waves, which we'll talk about Bethany Hamilton's thing and the trans policy later, stuff like that. I am certain that Carissa has an opinion on it. She's not, again, comfortable enough, because once she does vocalize what her opinion is, she will be held up as the voice of women surfing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that she's comfortable doing that in the way that Bethany Hamilton did it.
I mean, Bethany Hamilton just has nothing to lose, right? But Bethany Hamilton, I mean, I suppose Bethany Hamilton, she's already like a vocal Christian and, has her support from the right and all this, right? And she's a
spokesperson by profession.
Exactly. That's what she does. Yeah. So and Bethany doesn't surf on tour, right? So her boycotting the WSL means very little. Not that, I don't think that taking a stand or Bethany taking a stand is interesting or that she should have or anything, but she just, is an easier stand for her to take than for somebody to say like Carissa.
But it's an interesting thought to think that Carissa probably has a lot of animosity for the WSL at this point. Again, running in the conditions that they force her to run in all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she is clearly qualified to surf certainly the waves yesterday, but the waves the day before. And she should be given the opportunity at this point. She and the other women on tour have earned the opportunity.
It was strange. It was strange to me that they honestly did not run the women at all. Not even for, like, they put them out in trash, in utter trash, like arguably the worst waves I've ever seen anyone having to go paddle out into, right?
Yeah,
it was basically unsurfable. Then the next day you run men in great. And then you go back to, garbage time again. Here's the women.
Well, so I understand what you said earlier about the waiting period was bad and all that sort of stuff. If that is the case, then you need to run concurrent men and women's heats on every day.
I don't know why they don't do that.
Half the athletes across the board, the men and the women, half the athletes are going to get crappy surf and half the athletes are going to get the good surf. But it can't be the half that gets the crappy surf is the women and the half that get the good surf are the men, and by the way, not just this one time, this is regularly. Every single time. So how do the women on tour not take this as a direct assault?
Because you got Jessie Miley Dyer, chief of sport there, saying equality, equal pay. We've done, this, that, and the other thing. We have moved women surfing. They're beating the drum hard. And there is, I'll fully give it to them. The pay thing, and they've progressed in, I'm sure, a lot of ways, but they have not progressed in giving the women a great playing field.
I'll tell you exactly why, or in my opinion, why. I don't think that Eric Logan and Jessie Miley Dyer have bad intentions. No. I don't think they're nefarious. I think that they completely don't understand the sport and they completely don't understand surfing. And so I've pointed to this a lot, that Eric Logan lacks vision, whatever, but it's like, you can bring in a CEO to do dirty work. You could bring in Andy Mooney at Quicksilver to do all the bloodletting and fire everybody. Yeah, to reduce expenses essentially. And everybody knows that he's the bad guy. I feel like they brought in, Dirk Ziff, first of all, doesn't understand the sport. So he brought in Eric Logan to do a certain thing. It was develop the WSL studios. Yeah. Let's create all this shoulder content. We have a tour. Let's create shoulder content. This will open it up to the outside world, to new fans, essentially, who will then become consumers of the tour itself. Well, he completely failed at that. And obviously so bad that they had to shutter the studios within a year or two. Bumping him up to the CEO, who actually now runs the tours, was a huge mistake. If somebody failed at the job that you hired them for, I don't know how you then promote them to the other job. And so I don't think he's nefarious. It's just that he completely misunderstands everything about the sport, the core of the sport, the essence of the sport. So when you have somebody that misunderstands it, who is now the arbiter of the thing, they are making decisions based on social influence. So when Black Lives Matter, that's what they're talking about. When Me Too, when equal pay matters, that's what they're talking about. They don't realize that means for the next 5 years, and by the way, in perpetuity, you have to run in equal conditions. You have to give equal opportunity. You know what I mean? So that there's then equal results in the end and that sort of stuff. They are a windsock that blows whichever direction the social wind is blowing,
Sure.
not understanding that surfing is a very strong wind in and of itself. And if you understood it, you would have clear direction and focus and know exactly what to do, which is, by the way, running the best surfers and the best waves in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's for sure. Whatever they're doing is, I think, all, not all performative. I mean, I truly believe, obviously, that, Eric Logan and Jesse Dyer and whoever else is in the room anymore over there does care about equality and, cares about these things. But so much of it outside of that is straight lip service to the thing, without really investing in, okay, what is, again, I was thinking about it during this, during the women's side of the pipe, how badly they got ripped off. They're surfing crap pipe. They used to surf Honolua, which is a phenomenal stop, right? They lost one of their best stops, not there, one of the best, one of the better waves in the entire world, right?
Totally.
Is Honolua. They lost that to go surf garbage at pipe.
Yeah.
Like, which
And
is,
they
they
had
really got
full-
ripped off.
They had full priority access to Honolua because there was no men's event there.
Best day. I mean, that's the thing. Like, when you looking at it, I was thinking, wait a second, wait just one dang second. WSL is making this all about the opportunity for the women to surf pipe. And wow, this is historic and we've never done this before. And how amazing this is, they get this opportunity. They, in order to do that, lost their best thing that they had all to themselves.
And that's again why I'm saying Carissa should be offended. And I would imagine that she probably is. She just can't say it, because when it is all performative, when you don't actually care about equality, when you just care about talking about equality, then you don't think about what equality actually means.
No.
And if they did think about it, they would be like, oh, that means, yeah, surfing the best waves, again, Honolua, when it's pumping and that sort of thing. Because yeah, that is the men on tour.
Yep.
Would wish that they could surf Honolulu.
No kidding. But now
Right.
women are getting like scraps at pipe instead of as good as Honolulu gets in any given window.
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about surfing still. So let's pull it back a little bit. Leonardo Fioravanti made this final with
He
Jack
sure
Robinson.
did.
And Leonardo, maybe we haven't really discussed his story on air, because anytime anything happens, it's kind of, I don't know, there's other news stories that's happening, but the kid has broken his back at Pipeline.
Yep.
He was a child prodigy. I mean, he was surfing events with Jack Robinson from the time they were Groms. He was right alongside with Kanoa. Griff, right? Well, actually on Team Quicksilver. So it was Jack Robinson, Kanoa, and Leonardo.
I have a great video. I think I've shared it with you before, where I'm interviewing baby Jack, Leo, and Kanoa. They're like, couldn't have been older than 11 on the Gold Coast. And it's pretty dang funny.
Yeah. So those kids have been competing at this level forever. However, at some point, Kanoa and Jack got $1 million contracts and Leo hasn't. He was with Quick up until recently. And what's interesting is Griffin basically, presumably, took that budget. So as soon as Griff put the Quicksilver sticker on his board, Leo's was ripped off. And Leo's had a rough go kind of on and off tour due to injury, not requalifying oftentimes. He's not the most dynamic surfer for whatever reason. And so I think that the attention just gets drawn elsewhere. But he's a workhorse and he is talented, and he's talented
gutsy. He is not afraid. Man, I was at Chopes once. I was at Tiahupa'o once, and it was biggish, and he was young, and he was right out there into it. Like, that kid is fearless.
Totally fearless. Famously, Stephen Bell is his stepfather, and so he's had access to, Kelly Slater and the whole industry, and I think that has really served him well. Access to the world, by the way, for traveling and surfing around the world. Speaks a bunch of languages, all this sort of stuff. But all of that is to say that he's developed the work ethic along the way as well. And so to see him show up at this event. And in his post-heat interview, the way obviously we talked about him in the Apple Watch last week, to see him speaking freely, confidently, truthfully, all that sort of stuff, I found myself rooting for Leo, and I haven't ever
Definitely.
rooted for him in the past.
A real breath of fresh air, I thought. I really liked I feel, whatever, like any WSL season starts again, he kind of, it feels like there's going to be no new storyline, and there always is a new storyline. And Leo's rise from the ashes, again, he got cold at the mid-year cut last year and basically prevented that from happening again with his performance at Pipe, but looking strong for the entire year. I mean,
Totally.
Leo looks like a solid pick.
There's something about a surfer without a sticker on their board too that makes
it's crazy
looks
how many
good.
there were. Who was it that, wow, it was in the
somebody
somebody
Maxime
got
Husino.
maybe, Maxime Husino, like fully blank. There was not, I don't think there was one sticker on there, not one.
I know. And he was a Quicksilver guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Leo, I think that is the fire in his belly. He's like, he knows he's as good as all those guys and they're earning millions of dollars and he's not.
He's going to go get his. Yeah.
He's going to go get it.
It was great. It was great. What other inspirations did you have? Or what other surprises, small surprises did you have?
Liam O'Brien.
Yeah.
Was another one that I never would have put money on, who found himself, I think, in the quarterfinals.
Yep.
Joao Chianca is so thrilling to watch.
I mean, Joao, you could realize this year how Joao just had straight bad luck last year. He came up against, epic John Florence, of course, but Joao is like a real future of Brazilian surfing.
I agree. He had bad luck throughout the year because he came up against John at J-Bay, I think it was, again later in the year.
Yeah.
And surfed a 2 9-point rides, I think, in that heat. John's were slightly better again. And so Joao, I think, of all the people who got cut at the mid-year, Joao surfed the best out of all of them and would have won any of those heats if he was against other people throughout the year and found himself, probably in the top 10.
Bad luck.
So good for him for kind of showing up this year and doing it again. I think those, he has a sticker on his board, but I love the way his boards look too, because it's just one sticker, that Volcom sticker on the nose and the CI logo on the board and nothing else. Looks good. Great.
It's so good that I mean, even Gabriel Medina's, NASCAR surfboard is gone. Like, it seems like everybody, both from probably attrition and whatever, surfing not being, not as many sponsors, but it looks good, I will say. Sorry you're not making as much money, but it's pleasing on the eye, everyone.
Yeah. Do you think, it makes me think, I interviewed Troy Eckert, so I've been thinking about Volcom a bit, but I like Volcom's team.
It's looking good.
Between Jack Robinson, Joao Chianca, and when I was a kid, the Volcom team really meant something. Like, there was a certain personality type that was so on brand, like Bruce, Gavin, there was a certain personality type. And I feel like these guys they're their own personalities, but it's still, the stone means something.
Again, it's back from the grave, the stone.
I like it.
What did you think about the announcing?
I didn't think anything of it, to be honest. I wasn't necessarily listening with the sound up, I think.
Okay.
A lot of it. Why? Was there anything of note?
Well, I mean, I just think that, of course, like Laura Enever's continued rise, like she is a gem and is really fully come into her own, I think, as a broadcaster, and should just be the main voice, right? Like both her insight into surfing, the way she can talk about it, and then her relationship with the surfers themselves. Like when she's doing the kind of beach interviewee thing, there's always there's a comfortability there, like where the surfers know that she obviously charges, they're all bros, but it seems like they give more of themselves when they're talking to her rather than when they're talking to somebody else. So Enever, epic. I really like Kaipo. I really like the pairing of Kaipo and Ross. I thought they were both funny, and especially as the days got long, some of the sheen of like just pure professionalism would go away, and they would start like misspeaking and then laughing at each other. And there was like moments of real humanity,
Yeah.
which was especially wonderful as soon as Plastic Joe Turpel came back and was talking with Megan. Like that thing needs to go. Like not Megan, but
I think
Joe
Megan needs
Turpel.
to go.
Megan maybe needs to go, but the voice of pro surfing, his one speed. I mean, again, we've talked about this for years, that, and he gets back on the ski and resets after a shark attack. Or like Strider this time told a story, was out in the lineup and got rolled by a wave, right? And
Yeah.
slammed the reef. And Strider told it in a amusing way, but I'm sure that it was fairly, you have this big microphone pack on your back and you're bouncing off the reef. Like, for sure Strider wasn't scared or anything, but Strider told the story in a humorous kind of way. And it just comes back to One Speed Joe of gotta love it, Strider. Like,
Right.
where you should have said at least like, wow, well, that sounds sketchy. Or with all that equipment on your record, could have asked another question. It seemed like something to actually have an exchange about. All Joe can say is gotta love it, Strider, and yeah, back to the water. Like, it's just his flat his inability to go up or down, just ever loving everything and one speed. I don't know how you can have a one speed voice always.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And I do have thoughts about the commentary now that you kind of said those things. What happened to Alex McCord? She was there on the first couple of days of Pipe, and then she disappeared once we came back after a few lay days.
That's really true. I wonder if she's not a full-time employee and is like juggling surfing, because she was great.
She's fantastic, but I know that she does professional commentary for other sports.
Yeah.
So like football and stuff. So maybe she had a pre-existing obligation at the second half. Somebody sent me a note saying that Sally Fitzgibbon hit on her during her post-heat interview on the crappy day.
Nice. Good job,
I
Sally.
know.
Yeah.
I know. So I meant to go look it up to verify it before talking about it on air, but I'll just say that I haven't looked it up yet, so maybe it's not true. But I'm curious to see if Sally shot her shot on air.
I like to see it.
I know. I'm also wondering where Ronnie Blakey is. I think last year he was gone, but we didn't know if it was a temporary thing, and now he seems to be totally
gone.
I
mean, it seems like
a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame. It is a shame because at least Ronnie had the straight man was the flip side to Joe, but at least there was variation in, of course. I mean, Ronnie's a great broadcaster anyway.
Totally.
And it's nothing against Joe. Like, I'm sure, again, Joe's a great person, has a real encyclopedic knowledge of surfing, or at least of pro surfing, but that he doesn't even really share, right? Like, you'll hear him drop like a gem from a heat and wherever, and it's interesting. And I'm like, do that more. If you're going to be one speed, at least dig into your brain and like share whatever interesting anecdotes from surfing's past.
I hate to say it about Megan Abubo, because growing up, she was among my very favorite female surfers. She's not great. She's not great in the booth. I'm thrilled to see her back. I feel like, number one, she's not the most well-spoken, articulate, or anything like that. So I think obviously the reason why they have her is she's got street cred. So bring in an expert on ex-professional surfer and all that sort of stuff to provide context for, how dangerous Pipeline is or whatever it is. But I feel like she hasn't watched surfing in the last 5 or 6 years. And little details, like she doesn't know surfers' names, let's say. She doesn't really know who's who or what's what. She knows who the Hawaiians are, but she's not up to date on what's happening in pro surfing. And other little things like Joe Turpel mentions that John Florence armbarred that wave to stall. And Megan thought that was the funniest and most novel thing she's ever heard. She's like, oh, I like that armbar. And I'm like, Megan, they say this in the broadcast all the time for like literally the last decade. Have you not watched a surf contest? And then she brought it up for the next 2 or 3 days. Hey, Joe, remember when you said armbar? He just did that armbar again. And it's like,
poor Megan too fell into the sticky trap of getting caught in one word and saying it over and over and over. She used spicy like every 8th word. It was something spicy. Spicy wave, spicy board, spicy surfer, spicy action, spicy. It's like, so I'm sure she would, even if she wanted to go back and listen to herself, would think, ooh, next time don't say one word a billion times.
I'm sure, honestly, there's a learning curve. I know
For
that there's a
sure.
learning curve. And so I would be totally fine if they brought her back. And, I think that she would get better. And I grew up loving her. So I hate to even be speaking this way about her, but let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Honesty, David Lee. It's what we bring.
I owe it to the listeners. That's
Yep.
what I'm always thinking about. The other huge question is, will Kelly Slater make the mid-year cut?
It's a great question. His performance in Pipe was not indicative that he will, let's just say. Like, it's when Kelly starts, it's one thing to like blow it physically kind of or whatever. Like, clearly he's 50, almost 51 in 2 days, I do believe, David Lee Scales. It's Kelly Slater day. So clearly, like, you don't stay young forever. But watching him just like blow, like really botch tactics at a wave that he knows better than anyone out there, right? And his reasoning afterwards for what he was thinking and what he was doing, obviously it makes sense, but it clearly wasn't working. And at some point you better shift.
Yeah. Well, Kelly screwed me in the Survival League. I am out
How many
for the entire
did he
season.
screw?
I don't know the hard number. I know that 64% of people lost in Survival League.
By far the biggest culling of Survival League's history.
I know. Event 1, 64% loss. So I don't know how many of those were Kelly Slater picks, but I was one of them. There was never a safer bet. Like, in terms of statistically, at any event on tour, who would you pick? Kelly at Pipe is statistically the safest bet. And so he screwed us all. I feel like he owes all of us $20.
I mean, a real gaffe. The way he did it too, the way he just blew it. He straight up sat on the wrong part of the reef and took the wrong waves.
Well, he got the backdoor waves. He just didn't make it out the little chandelier at the end, which was very unlike him. And I know it was a 3-foot wave. And if it was a 10-foot wave, he would have made it, but he normally would have still made the 3-foot wave too, That's
a real bummer. I mean, which I wonder, is it a symbol of his lack of care, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Does he just not have the motivation to actually push through that little chandelier at the end, metaphorically?
Yes. And literally.
Yeah.
And for the last decade, he hasn't. And we've been talking about that here as well, ad nauseum. But the only thing that motivates Kelly at this point is pumping surf. And so I don't think I.
Yeah, I mean, if Kelly mid-year cuts, then that's it for Kelly Slater, which is going to be, there's no way he's going to go down to the Challenger Series and try to requalify. He couldn't, right? I mean, he just could not. And the trouble for the WSL is, once you lose Kelly, you lose the marquee draw name, right? Like, watching when the viewer count go up on the YouTube, when Kelly's in the water, it goes up by a third, right? And then when Kelly's out of the water, Kelly is a draw. It's going to be like everything the World Surf League can do to keep him above the cut.
I remember there was times where Julian Wilson almost fell off tour, and then Kelly was interviewed and he's like, despite him having a bad season, Julian is so talented, he will not fall. Like, he will figure it out at the last event or whatever, because he's just that talented. And so I've always thought about that. And I think he said that about Jack Robinson too, before Jack won in Mexico. I don't feel the same way about Kelly at this point. I feel like when I watch Felipe and even Joao Chianca and guys like that surf 3-foot backdoor or 3-foot anywhere, I go, Kelly can't do that. Like, there's 15 surfers on tour that do that better than Kelly. Kelly is singular in what he can do in big barreling surf, but they're not running in big barrel. Most of the events aren't big barreling events. So when we talk about the mid-year cut, bad throwaway result at Pipe, he's liable to have a throwaway result always at Sunset.
Doesn't like verbally recognize it, or it says that he dislikes Sunset.
Totally. And then Portugal is a total wild card, unless Portugal is pumping.
Yeah.
He's very liable to lose in the round of 32, maybe the round of 16 there at best. I don't know that he's ever made the quarters there that I can remember. And then we're in Australia, and it's like, it's hit and miss in Australia. If Bells is pumping, maybe he'll do okay there. But he could legitimately not requalify.
I mean, very easily. That's the thing, is I think Pipeline meant more to him or more for him than to any other surfer, right? Like that is precisely how he stayed above the mid-year cut last year, is by winning pipe, right? He was
Totally.
done and dusted then. I can't even remember what he did the rest of the way, but I bet you could probably win one and go out of in the round of 32 at the rest of them and still surf 5, correct?
I don't know. I
I
don't know
think,
how the math works.
well, I mean, so how many events are there? There's Pipe, there's Sunset, there's Bells, there's
Margaret.
Portugal. No, is Portugal before or after the mid-year cut?
Portugal's early this year. It's the third event.
Okay, so it's there we go then. So it is Pipe, Sunset,
I think
Portugal,
there's 5.
Bells, and then the cut, right?
Yeah, I think there's 5.
Yeah, there's 5. Margaret's the cut. So I don't know. I mean, I guess he could do okay. I mean, it just purely depends on the surf. But you're exactly right. It depends on the surf 100% for Kelly, where it doesn't for Philippe or any of the other guys. Like any of those guys, as evidenced by Jack Robinson, willing, like just straight gutting out a win in garbage.
Exactly. And so I don't think Kelly can compete with those guys if the surf isn't good. But more importantly than that, he's not motivated. I don't see him being motivated, and he's too old. He's done it for too long, and he's got too many other things going on in his life. The only thing that motivates him is pumping surf, which is why we saw him win pipe last year. And so
ain't it a bummer? Ain't it a bummer though? You would think the WSL would be thinking, oh, this is our draw. This is our big draw. Kelly Slater. We should try to keep him in. What keeps him in? Pumping surf. Look at that. Shouldn't we have these guys in pumping surf? Imagine Kelly would surf till 60 if they had one swell window. They did exactly what we said, a limited amount of surfers, best swells of the year at the best waves of the year. Kelly, you get Kelly forever.
Totally, completely. I have another listener line call.
This is Ryan from Orlando. This is not Surf Splendor or any affiliation. Jesse Miley Dyer needs to be fired. I just finished watching the females at what I guess you would call Pipeline, but I'd prefer to call it maybe Uakai Beach, 1 foot, closeouts, high scores under 2, quarterfinals. And that's what they offered us. That was absolutely terrible.
Don't need to play them all. I got a dozen calls essentially saying the same thing. So a bunch of people who are watching that event throughout that day were needed somewhere to send their ire. And so they called the listener line to let us know how pissed they were about it.
I mean, it was egregious. It was truly, truly egregious. And I don't think that, I mean, yeah, sure, fire her, but also she won't be fired. But I think at the very, very least, she owes the surfers an apology and owes the fans an apology for that. Like when you when you want to praise yourself all day, every day, and really say, hey, I'm number one. Guess who the new chief of sport is? Then at some point, you got to also take the buck stops here mentality and say, hey, look, as chief of sport, I had a lot of input. We had a lot of people looking at this. But at the end of the day, I made the call to send them out, and I am sorry. And that's what a leader does, right? That's what a chief of sport does. And we'll never hear about that again, right? And it was truly, I mean, I poked fun of Stab for calling it the worst day in professional surfing history, but I think it was the worst day I've ever seen. I'm sure there was some crap day in France in 2001, but like, it was awful. It was awful. It was, I don't know how they just didn't do a redo, like send the girls out there and say, that was so bad. We're going to give you guys another shot.
Well, I guess I am a hardcore fan. We are hardcore fans. We will almost watch anything, and I wouldn't even watch that.
It was embarrassing.
So
it made
that's
me feel bad. It made me feel, honest to goodness, bad for the girls in the water. There was nothing to do with that.
I mean, honestly, they should have protested. They should have not paddled out.
Yeah.
It would be, honestly, if you're a crack addict and your dealer shows up and goes, here's some free crack. And you go, no, thanks. I don't want it. That crack is not good enough. I'll just have a soda instead. That's how I felt that day. I was the crack addict, and I wouldn't even do the free drugs.
Nope. I was like, look at that. Your drugs are, ugh. What,
I'm
how
gonna
did you let your
pass.
drugs go so bad? Yeah, no, thank you. It was, I mean, but again, it's just like, it's the stupid part of the wall of positive noise is that the inability to recognize the truth where it's okay. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all, you know, every one of us has made a real bad call, right? So Jesse, just own it. Just look back and say, you know, that day, I truly am sorry. I am sorry to the girls that we will even give throughout the line, we'll do better in the future, right? Just say, we'll look at what we put into place to how that decision happened. I take the blame. Take the blame,
Yeah.
Jesse. But
Well,
honestly, she seems pretty crap at what she does.
yeah. Well, you know what's I feel like they're villains. And again, no nefarious kind of intention, but I do feel like they're wolf in sheep. I don't know, Trojan horse, wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm not sure what the right metaphor is. I feel like when you hire somebody who looks like the people who you're going to then try to exploit and take advantage of is kind of what's happening here, where Jessie comes from the Women's World Tour. Let's bring her on and then make her make all of the bad decisions because nobody's going to say anything bad to her.
I mean, but I truly believe that she's making the bad decisions herself. That's the problem. And I think when you have
Maybe.
a real lack of accountability, like this is just what happens, right? Like she definitely does not feel the need to ever apologize about anything. None of them ever do. Like nobody
No.
apologized to Carissa, or maybe they did, behind the scenes apologize to Carissa. But there are things that the World Surf League does that, sure, we ride them hard on pretty much everything, but there's things that they should look at and say, we got this wrong. You never
Yeah.
once ever hear at like any kind of admittal that anything was less than just perfect.
No. Well, and it's straight out lying. They were when Eric Logan was on the set on day 2 or something like that, Joe Turpel was like, um, let's talk about the greatest day in surfing history, I think is what he said. And I'm like, oh, sweet. They're going to talk about the Eddie because the Eddie
Yeah.
had just ended
Yeah.
literally 1 week ago. And they start talking about lowers
It's insane.
and then patting each other on the back for how great the lowers concept is. And I go, you guys just said, let's talk about the greatest day in surfing.
But I think
It's far from the greatest day in surfing.
they're
Like
so out to lunch.
even the swell that was just in the water in the Pacific in California was a better day of surfing than, you know what I mean? Like there's countless better days of surfing and competitive surfing than that.
I mean, that's the crazy thing though. They believe it, right? Joe should know better than to believe it, but Eric Logan believes that day was the best day. He's looking at the numbers, right? However they jimmy him, like whatever happens, however it works to him, that was the best day in pro surfing history or in surfing history.
I think I think he comes from, again, he misunderstands surfing so much, but he comes from a world where if you just say it enough and amplify it enough, it is the truth.
Yeah.
That's the world that he comes from,
I mean, I would love
when you work for Oprah and you have that amount of backing and money and media kind of echo chamber, it's true. Like I would really say, because
I would love to challenge him. I would love to have another interview with him, just like purely based on, let's really go gather the data. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I would be willing to be wrong. Maybe that was both objectively and subjectively the greatest day in surfing history, and I just missed it somehow. I was the one who was wrong. So let's go figure it out, right? Let's do a poll, or there'd be some way to get to the actual bottom of, was this actually the best day in pro surfing history?
Well, and when he's done giving that answer, be like, what'd you think about the Eddie?
Yeah. Well,
and just let him answer that.
Oh yeah, I can't say what I heard, but yeah.
What? Oh, really?
I mean, yeah, I don't think I can say. Can I say? Let me think. Let me think about it for a minute.
Think of how to word it to where you can say something about what.
Okay. Eddie or Hila was aware of the Eddie and trying to do deals, backroom deals, but never publicly. Like it seemed real egregious to me. It seemed what he was doing, not recognizing it on the surface, but underneath trying to do stuff, seemed as like flim flammy two-faced as you can possibly be.
Was
I'll
he
leave it at that.
trying? Was he trying to get it? The WSL partnered with it so that they could
No.
help stream
No,
and
no,
promote, or trying
no.
to undercut the.
Not trying to undercut, trying to basically take assets and do things with those assets without crediting, or the Eddie would get nothing from it.
Got it.
It would only benefit the World Surf League and or himself, et cetera, right? It was like real, from my perspective, real dirty pool.
Gotcha. That's par for the course.
Yeah.
I've tried to do a couple of deals with them, and I could tell you that's kind of how it goes. I'll give you another little tidbit, you and the listeners. Do you want to guess? So somebody was trying to use WSL footage for something at some point. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, if you ever try to publish their footage on Instagram, it gets deleted. You can't do it on YouTube, otherwise it gets deleted. So somebody was trying to license WSL footage from the surf events for something that they were doing. Do you want to guess how much the WSL, specifically ELO, was attempting to charge per minute?
Is it per minute? Okay, so per
minute for WSL footage to be licensed to use in a different project.
Okay, I'm going in now to my memory because I licensed footage for the Lisa Anderson film, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna say $200 a minute.
Just under $30,000 a minute.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Are you kidding me?
Totally dead serious.
What was the person trying to do with the footage?
Can't say.
That is
I don't want to put them on blast, but this is legit.
I mean, that's insane. That's like straight up highway robbery.
Just under $30,000
per minute.
A minute for the footage. And they wanted, multiple minutes, and they were like, this is just insane. There's no way this does not fit the budget, And they're like, so basically the impression left was, this is a money grab. This is them just trying to turn a profit at every turn, overlooking the bigger picture, because the bigger picture was, this is a big project that we're working on. We're telling your story. We're helping you tell your story. And so allow us to help you tell your story. And the number was so astronomical that they were like, well, let's meet in the middle somewhere. Nope, this is the number. And so they just thought, well, I'm not going to even try to help you tell your story then.
No.
Like, if you're strictly here to turn a profit, you're missing the point entirely. And I'm not going to try to help you.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it is totally straight up ridiculous.
Totally insane. Anyways, more on the WSL, actually. You and I got a text a week ago from somebody screenshotting the WSL rule book, showcasing that there was a change made unceremoniously, not publicized at all, but a rule book change within the WSL that would allow trans surfers to compete in their identified category, gender category. And so before you wrote an article on Beach Grit about it, you got scooped by the Inertia. The Inertia actually broke this story. So two things. What exactly does the rulebook say? And number two, how did you let the Inertia scoop you?
Oh, well, I don't know about the Inertia scoop. That really hurts my feelings. It was Derek that actually wrote the story. So I'm going to blame Derek on that one. But doesn't matter. Nobody reads the Inertia anyway. As far as I could tell, the rule book, it's like it's an amount of testosterone per whatever, in order to compete in the women's side as a naturally born, I don't even know what the language you're supposed to use.
Trans woman. So if you're naturally born male and you're a trans woman, you can compete in the women's category.
Yes. And with a certain amount of a low amount of testosterone. But where I think the interesting thing is, and why people became a hullabaloo, is that it's like some of the most liberal rules in sport, like compared to all the other Olympic sports. So the least stringent, I will say. And so then, Bethany Hamilton comes out and boom, blows it all up.
Well, so the story itself of the WSL implementing the rules that are, by the way, the rules of the IOC for the Olympics. So they're
It's not the
just
rules
kind
of IOC. It's the rules of the surfing.
Oh, just the surfing part
Yeah.
of the Olympics?
Yes. So that's
Oh, I didn't realize that. I
yeah,
thought it
it's
was
not
for all
IOC.
of.
No, if it was IOC, then I think there would be no, what could you say, right? That's what the IOC had done. And if surfing is going to be an Olympic sport, then that's what they have to do too. But no, all those sports are allowed to have their own rules as it relates to that, or all the federations. And surfing's mirrors the least stringent of those rules.
Gotcha.
So I think
Gotcha.
that's what frustrated Bethany and all that.
Well, okay. So before Bethany spoke up, was this a story to you?
I mean, it's a story in as much as they haven't said anything, right? So you have Sasha Jane Lowerson, they winning longboard competitions in Western Australia, and there was seemed like at least the Western Australian, she wasn't competing for it wasn't a World Surf League sanctioned event, I don't think, was it? Her longboard stuff? No. Yeah, it was like the Western Oz thing. And they were like, cool, we don't care, you can do it all you want and whatever. So then it's kind of like, okay, well, if this is starting to happen, World Surf League, then clearly you're going to have to make a stand. At some point, you're going to have to say these are our rules. I'm sure they were happy when what's Fernando's organization called?
ISA.
So it's the ISA who chose those rules, and I'm sure WSL was happy that somebody else did it, and so then they could say, oh yeah, us too, that's what we're going to do, right? So they probably didn't think much about it other than say us too. But yeah, oops.
So then Bethany Hamilton speaking about it became the story, essentially. Yes. Because I did not necessarily feel like the rule change was a story, mainly because I don't see a real world scenario in the near future. It's not like there's some trans surfer coming up through the amateur ranks that it will then be competing on the world tour in the next 5 years. So I don't know. I didn't really care.
Exactly. It's fun. I mean, that's what Jamie Twarkowski, the To Write Love on Our Arms founder, like suicide prevention, came from the surf industry. Great
Right.
guy. That was his contention, more or less, right? And he got hammered hard for it. This is not you're really debating about not one person knows or can name a trans woman surfer with stickers on her board. Not one, right? This is a purely theoretical debate, but that's affecting real people, right? That suicide rates amongst transgender folk are really high. And I guess you could argue, the people argue on both sides about why those suicide rates are high, et cetera, et cetera. But, there is a real world issue versus a purely theoretical issue, but I guess it's not purely theoretical to, I guess of Bethany. I don't know. Like, I understand Bethany's point. Like, I think it's just so dicey, right? Like, because I fully do. Like, it's the women who are going to get screwed here again, right? Women's sports, finally, after years, you're still, maybe making 75 cents in the dollar, if that, as the men are across all sport, right? Yeah. And right when you can maybe see a bit of sunlight, though, in terms of, like people being interested and people watching and money and stuff. Okay, here's this big, sorry, now you got to have, born males compete with you. I fully see Bethany's point.
What was Bethany? Can you sum up what Bethany's point was for listeners?
I think it's just that. I think Bethany just took the line of, look, this is not fair. You're going to throw, even though it's theoretical at this point, but it may not be theoretical forever, but you've just opened the door to have people with a clear biological advantage surfing against us. Like, we're just going to be out to the slaughter, more or less.
Right. Well, for the record, Bethany did not even state her stance. She posed the entire Instagram, 3-minute video as questions.
All questions. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, hey, let me present these questions.
But it was leading the witness questions, all of them.
Yeah, 100%. But the questions are legitimate. And among the questions were, WSL, have you had any conversation with any of your athletes?
Yes.
And the answer is objectively no, they have not. So that's a great question for Bethany to ask. Why would you implement a rule change that affects everybody? Again, theoretically, not necessarily in practice,
But still,
but it affects everybody without having a conversation with them, you know? Number two was, I think, or not number two, but one of the other questions was like, is this progressive? Like, does this help progress the sport of surfing for female surfing? Also, the answer is probably no. You know what I mean? So I thought all of Bethany's questions were really salient and worth asking and worth discussing. What's interesting for me sociologically, culturally, is just how much vitriol there is on this subject. For the vast majority of us who don't even know a trans person, to have such intensity and passion for this is a super interesting thing that I think reflects more on the person the person themselves than it does on anything else. Like, this is basically conservative people who are afraid of trans people existing in the world.
I mean, I think that is some of it, but I do think that the other side of it, there is something to this is not fair, right? And it's going to be
there's that too,
who cop the unfairness. But again, you know, like, I don't know, I would love, and it's never going to happen, but it is like people who see this as straight black and white, you know, is fine. But to me, it's so nuanced, and especially when it comes down to the person, right? The person sitting across from you. And because at the end of the day, if you think a trans person is mentally, you know, whatever, like all wrong, they're still a person, right? And so for you to look at them as a person and say, I give you no rights as a person, I invalidate your personhood, which is essentially where the debate spins, which is hurtful, right? Like, it is hurtful to a person. And so again, in skateboarding actually had this, right? There was a trans woman skateboarder who just went and mowed through the girls' divisions, right? Like, and so these girls who were getting $500, the money is so minimal already. To get your $500 contest winning check mattered, right? That actually put food on the table. You were trying to do this thing, and then all of a sudden, here's a dude, like, or that's rude to say a dude, but here's somebody who is clearly advantaged, mowing you all down, just like, I mean, like a machine gun to all of them, right? Nobody could even come close to winning. Like, that's not fair.
Right. So I'll address that too. I think there's a couple of different things to address. One is the animosity, the amount of intensity and animosity towards Bethany Hamilton just stating what she stated is crazy.
But also the amount of support and stuff for her, right? Like, she's the amount of passion hero.
The amount of passion on either side, you know, like if she was talking about anything else, the judges scoring, or Stephanie Gilmore coming from behind and beating Carissa Moore on finals day or whatever, like, we're all interested to chime in a little bit, but nobody cares that much about. No, you know, it's
headline news
with this thing, people who, again, don't even know a trans person, this will never affect their life in any way, are more angry about this than they would be about anything else. So that is super interesting to me culturally, because I almost think it's a non-story. I almost think it's a non-story in practical terms. But in terms of what you're talking about, of the matter of fairness, it's objectively unfair, right? So the idea that we are going to take this kind of ideology where we want trans people to be included at the risk of excluding the vast majority of the female competitors, I think is hugely problematic. To say we're going to we're going to change the rules now without addressing anybody who's been supporting and competing and all that all along the way, change the rules in a way that's going to negatively affect you for a small percentage of a potential population in the future is just a wrong-headed business decision.
Well, I mean, what I don't understand, I suppose, which maybe is the human condition, or maybe it's a modern human condition, is the feeling that everybody holds, apparently, that of course I deserve my cake and I deserve to eat it too, right? Which
Insane.
how many
Insane.
times in life? So if you know, if you transition, if you are a transgendered woman, then maybe that's your cake, but you don't get to eat it. You don't get to compete in
Correct.
sport. Like that's
Correct.
sorry. Like it just, we all make decisions daily that like where you can't do something else because you made
That
this
limit.
decision.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
make a decision, it limits other decisions.
Yep.
I personally would love to compete on the men's CT. Turns out I can't. You know what I mean? Like I was biologically limited or physically limited or in whatever ways. That's not for me. Like not everything is for everybody. And
Yeah.
so absolutely advocate for what you want. And if you have the talent, maybe you can then pursue what you want. And if there's some limitation that prevents you to have equal access, then you can advocate for that. But this was specifically designed to showcase the kind of the finest talents within this within these parameters. You know, like the only reason that sport is interesting is if you're seeing the two best basketball teams playing under these rules and guidelines. The only reason surfing is interesting is seeing these rules and guidelines and seeing who figures it out with these certain parameters. And so if you're going to entirely change the parameters, it becomes a lot less interesting.
I mean, it just feels to me so much like life is so unfair, right? Life is unfair. And so
100%.
humans made sport to try to make things fair. At least for a minute, we can think that, okay, there's fairness here, right? There's going to be the best man or woman is going to win. And now this is all up in the air. Again, theoretically, as there is no, you know, transitioned that I know of, that anybody knows of. Nobody knows a trans woman surfer with stickers on the board. Not to say it won't happen, but nobody knows one today.
The other thing that grinds my gears about this is the WSL virtue signaling for so many things that have no meaning. And then this one doing it quietly because they know that it's going to be controversial. You know what I mean? And so Bethany Hamilton is, I wouldn't say heroic, but she's courageous to go ahead and put her foot down and be like, hey, everybody, let's point attention to this decision that was made. She's the one who's going to catch all the flack for the WSL, who should have been the one to either, by the way, if you fully believe this, Eric and Jesse,
then get behind it.
Then get behind it and talk
Just
about it.
Totally say no.
And then defend it. And then when Bethany Hamilton makes her statements, then you guys defend it. But again, that limp windsock thing that I said earlier, this is the exact example of that.
I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they made a decision and won't believe in it. That's all fine and good. Say, no, we want this to be an open, equal place. And when we say that, we are including transgendered people too. We think that this needs to be a place for them in surfing. And we think at this scientific, you know, whatever, testosterone per blah, blahs, that this is fair. And we believe this. There's just crickets. Totally. It's ridiculous.
So the other thing that's worth mentioning from Bethany Hamilton's statement was the measurement used to dictate whether or not they could qualify was 12 months worth of hormone levels or testosterone levels. Testosterone levels. And her thing was like, womanhood, femaleness is not measurable by that metric. And it's a much more, comprehensive assessment than just that. And so I understand that we're still learning and figuring out what that assessment is, but ultimately that's not enough to determine womanhood, essentially, or femaleness. And she didn't say this, but I think that a logical argument is that it's actually entirely measurable by 2 chromosomes. You know, I mean,
yes, totally. Except for, what are you going to do then with sport? And like, they're going to have to figure out some way to measure something. And I fully agree. Like it is, there's essential differences in being born a man versus being born a woman. And I still can't believe that people like J.K. Rowling or whatever get canceled for suggesting such things, like for saying there is a difference between biological male and female. is wild to me. It's wild, not to jump into the culture war with both feet, but
Well, I had
like,
somebody text, I had a surfboard shaper text me this past week about the Bethany thing. And he goes, you know, I don't know if it's okay for me to say this, but are like thing, has everybody lost their mind? And I go, the fact that you're afraid to text your friend on a private text thread, worrying if it's okay to say that is the problem.
yeah.
Like the idea that you could be canceled over questioning whether or not, that's the problem,
I
you
mean,
know?
the internet mob will come for you for wondering things out loud that,
Yeah.
and or that we can't even have difference of opinion. You say full on, like, I think that all trans should be able to do whatever they want in any division. You know, fairness be damned, because we don't really care. What's more important is the person at the end, versus the other person saying, well, I completely disagree. I think this and this and this. And at the end of the day, you shake hands and say, well, great. Guess what? We have a difference of opinion. Can you believe it?
And I think that's all that it is a difference of opinion, because Bethany even states she's not transphobic.
Yeah.
And she says, I live with a lot of love and respect for everybody, like not even trying to. It's just the state of being that I'm in. So I'm absolutely not transphobic, you know? And so I think that's the misunderstanding, is that people do think that not allowing trans in competition means that
You're
hate,
transphobic.
that you're transphobic, you hate that those people and you don't want them to exist.
Unlike Kelly Slater,
who
who does actively hate women. Ooh,
what's that?
ouch! You see this one?
No.
Oh man, you know Andrew Tate.
I think, yeah, I've just seen him on the internet the
Talking
last
of
couple
culture
of
wars, Andrew Tate is like a real horrible, I think, objectively horrible man. He
Yeah.
was like a kickboxer who is basically like the guru for incels. For,
Yeah.
you know, he proudly says, I'm a misogynist. I, you know, hate women. Women should be in the kitchen. Women shouldn't drive. You know, all like he's all kinds of stuff. And he's in jail now in Romania for like
Right.
holding women against their will, I guess, whatever. Like a real messy dude, right? Somebody emailed me and said, I don't think that that Kelly knows that people could see the text he like. And it was the first text was or tweet was an Andrew Tate tweet, which said something he's going to donate $100 million to men who have been falsely accused. And then the second tweet that Kelly liked, and Kelly's only liked like 190 tweets, I think, in all of his Twitter years. The second one that he liked was something about, when is Hollywood going to learn that people don't want to see a bunch of gays in movies? Something.
Yeah. Andrew Tate said that?
No, there was some other dude who's a rapper.
Somebody else said it.
But those were
insane.
the two. Those were the two. And so this person sent me this thing, and I was like, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna write it. And then I thought, no, I can't write it because that's probably screenshot, right? Like, or you could fiddle, you could say anything there. You could say Kelly liked any tweet, right? Like Photoshop it. And so I went and looked, and lo and behold, Kelly liked those tweets. Like, what are you thinking, Kelly? This is hilarious. Like, it is absolutely public to see which tweets he likes.
When is Hollywood gonna learn that people don't want to see gays in films? Sounds like an Onion headline. I
mean, and Kelly liked it. Like, I don't know if he was like late night scrolling and then like nodding off and accidentally was liking tweets. I don't know what he liked about either of those tweets. That's so funny. It's wild to me. It was absolutely wild. That's what he apparently likes. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we've got a couple of barrel or Nas coming through from the listener line, but let's go to commercial break shortly so that we could tell people to go to linkedin.com/surf if they want to post a job.
Great.
All right, Chaz, we're back.
Perfect.
I mean, LinkedIn, I've mentioned this, I think last show, LinkedIn asks that we play the redundant ads, which isn't doing them the best service, but I'll just state it here in real time. If anybody needs to post a job, why would you not post it on linkedin.com/surf?
It's the only place to do it.
Taps in to your already existing network.
It's easy.
Easy, and then you just let it. I mean, literally everybody posts all of their job qualifications and everything on LinkedIn. That's the purpose of LinkedIn. So letting it kind of filter through that system and run through the algorithm, that's where you would post a job. There's stupid to post a job anywhere else.
I mean,
LinkedIn.com.
it's the people who, we all know that one person who like insists on doing the hard thing or the dumb thing just because it's their thing. Like nope, the person who stayed on AOL for way, way, way too long, et cetera, et cetera. Don't be that person.
No, paying $20 a month to AOL just to use that service.
Yep.
No, linkedin.com/surf, of course. All right, we have listener line calls for this week's Barrel or Nah. Here goes the first.
David and Chaz, good morning. I have a question for you. I don't know if this would be a Barrel or Nah, or if this would be a you know better, or whatever that segment was. Trust in us. I don't know which one it would fall under, but I have a question. I currently live in San Diego, and I think it was like a month ago, Katie Simmers had her video release right down the street from where I live. I am now 35 years old. I've always gone to like surf events since I was in high school, movies, things like that, anything that caught my interest. I lived in Huntington pretty much my whole life, so, it was always at my, disposal. And now I'm 35. I was thinking about going. Katie Simmers is 16, and it was probably going to be a bunch of 16-year-olds. I did want to see the movie itself, which I watched on Stab later. I didn't know if I was too old to go to an event like that. I saw like a recap later, and there was a ton of older pro surfers there, and people my age, I guess. But I just felt weird going to that premiere. So wanted to know, did I mess up and not go, have a good time, or has that era come to an end for me? Let me know. I appreciate your advice. Keep up the work.
Now, I'm uncertain. Maybe you can clarify. Is he confused about just going to premieres in general, or because it's a 16-year-old girl surf movie?
I think if it was the Bruce Irons movie, part 2, he would feel fine going. I think it's specifically about, and the older he gets, I think he's rightly identified that these surf premieres everybody's gonna, it's Matthew McConaughey and Dazed Confused. I keep getting older, they stay the same age. So that's a problem. He's entering this phase of life now where it's going to be an issue. Bruce Irons is not making his second movie. So I think he did the absolutely right thing. Unless you are involved in some work that requires you to go, because then you could, hey, it's not your, I can go. I work for Beach Grid. I can cover it, etc. You cannot go unless you want to start a podcast. If you really want to keep on, or a website or something, if you have a reason to go. If you don't, at 35 to a 16-year-old movie, you're straight up creepy.
Is there any way to not be creepy? Like, I'm thinking, stand in the back, hold a beer.
Creepier.
It's even creepier.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, well, just do you put your hands in your pocket? Nope,
Creepier.
that looks creepy. Hands out of your pocket. I don't know where to put my hand if it's not in my pocket.
Creepy.
Like, there's no way to pull this off. So I think the only saving grace here is if you have a child. You bring your child.
Definitely. So either have a surf industry job or a child.
Borrow a child.
Sure. If you really want to go, babysit.
Find a friend who has a kid and ask if you could take their friend to the event.
Yep. Done and
Not
dusted.
creepy at all.
But that is 100% true though. And I'm glad that this listener was wrestling with this because he could have just said, you know what? No, I like this. This is something I've always liked and I'm going to continue to do it. And you know what? He would have been pegged a pedophile.
Absolutely. By the way, they should have lookouts at these events now just because of this.
I mean, they should.
This is something that honestly we're going to be dealing with a lot because there is this huge influx of young talent.
Totally. Well, I will say I have a little anecdote here. Forgot about it until right now. The other day, just a couple of days ago, going to ballet, dropping the kid off or going to pick the kid up, and she had gone had a later class or something, or a private or something. So she was like, I don't know, maybe 9. And there was some guy going in before me, dropping his daughter off. He looked over his shoulder. I'm rolling through the parking lot, looked over his shoulder, made a dash to the doors, the like glass doors, opened them and pulled it shut on me. And so I was standing outside trying to open it, and he was like pulling it hard in. And then I finally said, "Oh, my daughter's in there." And he opened it and I could tell he was embarrassed, but he was a Chinese man. I don't think he spoke very much English, but I patted his back and I said, "Good looking out. Like, I would fully thank you. I feel safer with my daughter in here knowing that you're around, bro."
Despite the fact that he thought you were the
A
pedo,
pedophile.
or maybe
Yeah.
just homeless. You wear ripped clothing and you have neck tattoos.
It's true. There's a lot of, and I'll throw up he was like a well-dressed Chinese man. So I could throw in a little bit of, her ballet teacher. I told Dada the story, and ballet teacher said, "This guy doesn't understand Lucadia chic."
Well, I appreciate you not being personally offended and recognizing the greater good.
I was so happy, but all to say, back to the Katie Simmers premiere, I would love for somebody standing out there with a baseball bat hitting our dear caller in case he got the idea that he was going to go too. Just a baseball bat to the guts, man. Head home.
Exactly. I like it. Okay, we got another one, which also kind of factors in to a little bit of a cultural profiling here as well.
Jazz David, barrel or not for you, and that is Dahui merch, as in merchandise. So for context here, I am a white man from Southern California, and I dug up in the depths of my parents' drawers a Dahui shirt that I got in Hawaii back when I was a kid. And I was just thinking about, man, could I still rock Dahui merch, being a haole from the mainland? Or is it a no barrel? Anyways, I'd appreciate your advice.
What say you?
It's an absolute barrel. Rock that Dahui.
Is it?
Oh, I think so for sure. One time, I'll tell you the mistake not to make though. One time I got a pair of Dahui trunks at some, like I was really wanted to, it was something for Surfing Magazine. I was like, let's support the brands we like, right? I like Dahui, like Core. So I bought a pair of Dahui trunks from some online surf shop thing. I don't even know what it was. They were like expensive. It was like $50 or something. And it was like I paid full pop. And then next time I saw Eddie, I said, "Hey, Eddie, I got these, I bought my Dahui trunks." And, where'd you get them from? Oh, this, whatever it was, the online thing. Oh, those fucking guys. You fucking get your shorts from Costco. Fucking get them from Costco. So if people want Dahui, to get it from Costco is what.
Why was he recommending Costco? Because it was cheaper?
Yeah, it was cheaper, and it was like, I think he gets no, Dahui or whatever. Who knows? He didn't get any cut from this place. They were just like, he's selling it for whatever he's selling it for. I didn't quite understand why I was supposed to get it at Costco, but I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Rothman, Costco it is." But I think Dahui is an awesome brand. I love what, and to be able to support the Backdoor Shootout and all the good work, buy a stinking Dahui, wear it with pride.
I guess I'm agree with you in terms of supporting the brand because they support surfing. You know what I mean? Like they support a certain core of surfing, the most core, you could argue. But back to previous conversations of have confidence wearing what you're wearing. I could not confidently wear Dahui. It's so like not on brand for me that I would just feel super awkward wearing it.
I'm going to get you a Dahui shirt. I'm going to get us both Dahui shirts, and we're going to wear them on the next podcast. And just because maybe what's going to happen is you're going to feel the mana, the spirit of the islands. You're going to be bold and brave. You'll feel at home in your Dahui.
I'll speak with a pigeon accent throughout the whole podcast.
By
the way,
Brother David,
speaking of the last week's Fashion Police segment on the award show, I did not realize this at the time, but somebody sent me Leonardo Fioravanti's post. He's wearing a Gucci suit, but left the Gucci tag on the sleeve.
Oops.
On the exterior of the sleeve. He's holding the award. Like he wore it through the entire ceremony, went up and accepted his winning the CS. He won the Challenger Series, went up and accepted, then was taking photos holding his award with the Gucci tag still on the sleeve.
That's a faux pas right there. Poor Leo. I would have thought Leo would have known how to dress. I mean, Leo's been the face of Gucci.
that's the thing. He partners with Gucci, right?
Yeah.
Like he has a deal with them.
Yeah. Oops.
So how
Sorry,
does he
Leo.
not know that?
Yeah. Take it off, Leo.
All right. Well, final barrel or not from a listener.
David, Chaz, calling from Honolulu Airport. I just got out of the restroom, probably TMI right there. But there's a guy in there in the stall talking on his cell phone, talking about building an RV park, and where everybody in the bathroom could hear his conversation. Just wondering, is that a barrel or a nah? I'm pretty sure that's got to be a nah. Take care. Thanks. Have a great day.
Was that Paizel?
I don't know. I could check the phone number.
That sounded a lot like our wonderful friend John Paizel.
Well, while you address it, I could look up the number right now.
Yeah, and it's a definite nah. I mean, phone conversations, frankly, should not happen anywhere public, I think. And if you have to, if you're at the grocery store, if you're somewhere, of course, you keep it quiet. Like yesterday, in fact, had to get some, I don't know, like herbs or something. And so called the wife, just asked for questions, and she like FaceTimed me right away because she wanted to see what I was looking at, right? And so I quickly showed her, and then she wanted to keep talking about something else, and I hung right up because I'm not going to walk around the store FaceTime jibber jabbering, right? It's like
Right.
I called her on the landline, normal style, and kept my voice quiet. And that's what you do. Respect the privacy of your conversations.
Did you tell her you were hanging up, or you just like
I just hanged up.
out of spite just hang up?
Just boom. Nope. I'm not gonna. This is not the time or place to be FaceTiming.
And you should know that. And
Yep.
now I'm going to teach you that.
And even if you
Like
don't,
it.
I know it. So I will just take matters into my own hands.
What was she making with those herbs?
It was actually medicinal herbs,
Oh,
and not marijuana, but like it was some
Yeah.
tincture or something for the kid. It was like
Gotcha.
a immunity booster, echinacea-y thing.
I made a chimichurri last night, so I was
Ooh.
buying herbs as well.
Was it spicy?
No, well, I did put a jalapeno in there, but it was not spicy enough. I could have put more.
Mm.
Well, I agree with you. Obviously, this is a nah. The bathroom call thing is a nah. The idea, first of all, he said the guy was in a stall. So the
Yeah.
idea,
Oof.
the public thing is one thing. The having a conversation where everybody can hear is very nah, but having a conversation while you're taking a dump is also an affront to the other person on the other end of the line.
Like I mean, and I would hope that we could add this barrel or not to taking or having a call while sitting on the toilet is a nah across the board. Doesn't matter if it's your home, doesn't matter if it's, I mean, that
No.
is just a no. That is a no.
That
Do people not know
person apparently not. And I've had this happen, this exact scenario. I've been in bathrooms where I hear this
Sure.
happening, you know, and yeah, so it does happen, but the lack of decorum for that human being,
Lack
I
of
mean,
awareness.
lack of awareness of the surrounding, but the lack of decorum for their own dignity. You know what I mean? Like I guarantee you this guy's wife hates him. His children are embarrassed by him. There's
you know-
no two ways about it.
Do you know who drops anchor while chit-chatting on the phone? Eric Logan.
Do you know that for sure?
I guarantee it. He would be the kind of guy who would.
Yeah. Well, I am absolutely going nah on this.
Yep.
And more importantly, nobody wants to hear your conversation in the bathroom. So
Nope. Double
keep
no.
it to yourself.
Yep.
Keep it to yourself. Clearly. I looked up Paisal's number and I looked up the number that call came from. They are not the same.
Dang it. Well, John, call in with a barrel and all.
Yeah, John. All right. Well, and congrats, by the way, with your success, John. Paisel, Tyler Wright, I think, has been riding his boards the last 2 years and shooting the
has.
final at Pipe. So good for her.
In the WSL's new Stab in the Daylight.
Yeah, is that what it's called?
I think so, but it's the Shaper Awards through the year, right?
Yeah.
It's basically
I
that.
like it.
Yeah.
That's even better branding.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, we covered a ton this week. We're at 94 minutes or so. So yeah, monster show. Thank you, linkedin.com/surf. Thank you, athleticgreens.com/surf, not only for supporting us and our listeners, but also for supporting Jack Robinson. If you want to surf like Jack Robinson, if you want to podcast like us, go get athleticgreens.com/surf.
Who speaking of now, should I surf now that you're out and we're just riding my picks? Who should I pick to survive at sunset?
You're going to take my advice?
Well, I was thinking what I was going to do. I lost last year. John Florence lost me Sunset last year. That was a gut punch. I might ride John again though.
Yeah. John looks so good, right?
He looks so good.
And Sunset's his spot. So my picks for Sunset would be Jack, who you can't use. John, Baron Mamiya has won there.
I'm not going to go see I'm not going to go on a sneaky one. I'm going to ride as far as I can. I'm going to burn out all the good. I don't want to lose on Baron Mamiya and think, oh, with having like when I pick Baron Mamiya for an event, I want to have Gabe burned, Philippe burned, John burned. Like there's enough to go through of like top tier where you can pretty much not guarantee. There ain't no guarantees here, but I'm not looking down the line. I'm picking the best surfer every time.
Baron is the best surfer there, though.
You think so?
Well, he's
Baron's
won there.
Well, I mean, you're making a strong case. But I can see Baron competitively though, depending on the forecast.
I know.
It's those guys who win consistently. Yes, they win because they're great surfers. They also win because they understand heat strategy. They understand how to play the game, right? That's as much of it as surfing good.
Then you got to go John.
Yeah.
John
knows how to win.
John's the safer bet than Baron in this.
I got to get through.
I'm rooting for you.
Okay. There's going to be a losers. I think there's going to be a losers league.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm ready to lose again.
Yeah. It really is fun.
Well, it's heartbreaking too. I guess that makes it fun. If you win, I have advised you with this John pick, and so I expect a portion of the winnings.
Yep, you will have 1/3 of my surfboards.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right, Chaz, until next week.
Bon voyage.
All right, cover everything.
Yep. Enjoy that Paso Robles.